that have taken all of my things and cast them into the void.
I am Kelly Hogan, and we're here in the forest around Jean's farm in Portland, Oregon. And this farm, as well as other urban farms in the city, have been a huge inspiration for education and not just farming. My partner is also involved with the school, and he installs schools and gardens and runs garden classes in schools. And what we realized is when we met that he was putting schools into gardens and I was bringing or he was putting gardens into schools and I was bringing schools into gardens, and that that there's this really beautiful intersection of just kind of, I guess, where we're at right now in life is that some people are able to really make choices to step outside of what they've been told and what is familiar to them and step into a situation like this where they're actually sending their children outside to school to learn year-round. And then other people are, for lots of reasons, still in the educational system and kind of moving into the future by having ideas introduced to them within the system and then hopefully bringing that inspiration out. I'm a co-founder of the school. April Blair, who's the grade school teacher here, and I started the school about 7 years ago now. And we created the school. We started as a Waldorf program, a class at a Waldorf school. We were an off-site kindergarten and preschool, and then just being inspired by the land that we were on and creating a curriculum that wove intimately with the changes that were happening on the land and the needs of the land as each day and week and month passed, made us realize that we weren't really following any sort of we didn't need any curriculum guidance, because what we had all around us was what was guiding and informing what we were doing. With that lens, combining it with a more practical regenerative cycle of permaculture design, both on the level of projects on the land and then also designing our school and curriculum, which we consider an embodied permaculture design, because we're sort of living, we're living a model of regenerative cycles that the children are then imitating on the deepest layer of their being. And so it's becoming a part of who they are. And we always joke around about how we'll put adult permaculture courses out of business when we raise a generation of children that just naturally, when they see something that's out of balance, will be inclined to bring it back into balance. And then the learning cyclically is important too, stepping out of the linear way of thinking. And the best way that I can describe that is that the children will be playing in the dirt and digging up worms and maybe making, little fairy houses or worm hospitals, and then bringing over lots of medicine from the trees, the leaves from the trees, worm, child care centers, like all of these things that they're hearing about in the world, they can process through play. And so they do it that, the earth gives them every life lesson is like metaphorically represented in nature. And so the children are constantly playing all of these things out, which is really cathartic for them. It's a really powerful way for them to process what's happening in a safe space. And so they'll be playing with worms, and then we'll say, okay, it's time to gather the eggs for the chickens. And they'll think, oh, maybe we should feed the worms to the chickens. Okay, great, let's bring the worms over, we'll feed them to the chickens. So a linear thought pattern might be like, well, wait a minute, we just made friends with these worms, we've been taking care of them, we built houses for them. If we feed them to the chickens, that would be sad, right? Maybe, right? That's kind of a linear way of of thinking about it. But the cyclical way of thinking about it is, yeah, let's bring the worms over and feed the chickens. And then we'll feed the chickens, and then we'll gather the eggs from the chickens, and then the chickens' eggs will feed us. And then we'll go back and we'll bring our scraps to the compost pile. And then once the compost pile is thriving, we'll go back, and like when we start digging through it, guess what we'll find? Worms. There they are, you know. And so there's not all of these polarities of like sad and happy or bad and good or life and death. It's just a cycle. And so the fact that they get to participate in that, you know, how emotionally empowering is that then to go out into the world and just recognize that things are cycles, they're always changing, and that we have the skills to take care of ourselves, and that we're participating in this cycle that includes a little bit of everything. So it's not about trying to be happy all the time or trying to avoid anything in order to get somewhere else. It's a journey. And so I think that's what outdoor education really offers.